New laptop and it works. Yippee. Okay, let's talk shop. This is. I was watching. Well, actually, what I was watching is I stumbled upon a Markiplier video, and he played through a horror game, an indie horror game, which he does frequently. If you watch Markiplier or know of Markiplier, he made a movie. That's what they say. I still haven't seen it. I should, but there was a period of time where I actually went on itch.io, which if you're not familiar with, for whatever reason, is a website that you can find a lot of cool, very indie games that people make to varying degrees of quality and success, and it can be really cool to see what stuff people are cooking up, as well as, you can learn a lot, and there's all sorts of cool stuff. There's game jams, I think, that they host on itch, unless I'm mistaken, which is pretty awesome. I might enter one of those as a composer. I think that could be really cool. Or a writer. I don't know. But I watched Markiplier play through an indie horror game, and it reminded me of a time period when I was trying out just a bunch of indie horror games, because I kind of wanted to just learn what people were making and see what people were doing, because I love horror. I'm going to close my window right now because I forgot that it's open. Okay. There was a time period where I really wanted to try and make a horror game, because it's a compelling concept to me, and it's something I've enjoyed. I enjoy horror. I enjoy good horror. So a lot of my favorite movies are horror. I think one of my favorite movies ever will forever and always be John Carpenter's The Thing. That movie is extraordinary. It's so good. But I find myself so often in the indie horror world disappointed. I think that horror is often, it can be a little bit of a low-hanging fruit sometime. And I know a lot of devs say, okay, well, I understand Godot or Unity or Unreal. What's the easiest thing I can make that will be engaging immediately? Horror. You don't have to worry about really fun mechanics if it's a scary environment and people are going to, ooh, it's spooky. It's scary, right? You figure out how to do some jump scares. You come up with a serviceable plot, and now, bang, you've got a horror game. It's great. You just have some spooky jump scares, some fun visuals, or everyone does the, PSX, late 90s sort of, art style, graphic style, and admittedly I get kind of tired of seeing that all the time. I appreciate when people get a little more creative visually. I know making assets isn't easy, so it's easy to find a lot of ones for free, so I totally get that. But anyway, as I was just thinking about horror games, I found myself thinking, if I were going to make, or if I were going to tell someone who's making an indie horror game, one person, a group of 2 or 3, or small group or whatever, and they're trying to make an indie horror game, what would I tell them? Or what would I remind them of? Or say, okay, consider this. First and foremost, the elephant in the room that is good to address is that a lot of people make horror games that are 30 minutes, 15 minutes, because they know it will get clicks, and they know that YouTubers will make videos out of them because people love watching horror content. People love watching horror content. So I'm excusing. We're gonna ignore all the games that are made as attention grabbing things. We're gonna ignore that. There's a lot of horror games that are made for that reason, so I get that. But for anyone who is genuinely, they're okay, I want to make a cool little indie horror experience. Let's try something out. Here's what I would recommend. As someone who has never made a horror game, but has thought a lot about it, which, armchair philosopher that I am, makes me an expert, I guess. Not at all. But I think first and foremost, there's a lot of tropes that are used in horror. Horror is known for its tropes, right? You've got the jump scare that's okay, I'm looking around the tree on this side. Oh, there's no spooky monster that was chasing me. It's not there. I'm going to look over here. Oh, it's not there. And then I go back to this side. Oh, it's a spooky monster, right? That's a jump scare that you see all the time. Or there's, the fake out jump scare. That's super common. Jump scares in general are hit or miss a lot of the time. Some of my favorite jump scares in any media are the ones that are not in your face and are just there. I think about when you see the alien in Signs for the first time in the video, or when you see one of the most chilling jump scares that I ever saw was in Pan's Labyrinth. Fantastic movie. There's a scene where the mother, she's pregnant, she starts bleeding, and just like the scene where there's no, as far as I remember, I don't know if there's any musical cue. There might be like a sting of some sort, but there's no like in your face, there's nothing like that. It's no Five Nights at Freddy's stuff. It's like she just walks into frame, she's bleeding, but it scared the crap out of my brother and I when we were watching. It was so effective. So learn to figure out where your jump scares are and when to put them in, because a good jump scare can really, really sell a game and can really sell a little horror experience. A good jump scare in a game, it's tricky to get because the moment that the jump scare happens, now the tension is, it's what they always say about like horror stuff. It's like you get tension build, and then a big spike, and that's the jump scare. But the problem is, right after that spike, it always drops. The tension drops because the danger is subsided, as it were. And so then you have to build up the tension again, and the horror is lost a little bit because of the jump scare. So learning how to do a jump scare is really important, because I think that personally, I think some of the best, most effective jump scares are jump scares that then have a continued fear factor afterwards. Some of the best ones I would say are the ones where like something comes out of the darkness at you. And, okay, you know what? Here's an example. I think this game is not perfect, and this franchise has been publicly pooped upon by many people, and privately pooped upon by myself. Poppy's Playtime. I think that the first episode, chapter, whatever they call it, was definitely the best one in terms of just some of the good scares. I think that when you're walking towards that corridor, it's all black, and then Huggy guy, the big blue dude, he comes out of the darkness and he starts lumbering towards you, but it happens right in front of you, and it's scary. But the thing is that you now have to react. It's not like a jump scare and then you die. It's a jump scare, and now you got to move. You got to hustle. You got to get rolling, because the fear is still there. There's that immediate jump scare, but that terror has now set in of a legitimate like fear for one's well-being, where he's like, okay, I gotta run. I got to book it. So I think personally, my favorite jump scares in horror stuff are the ones that are followed by continued terror. I feel like that sustains the fear and the horror and allows it to really, really like stick around, because it's not just a boop and then it's done and it's over. It builds, and then it crests and it doesn't stop. It keeps going because of the terror that comes afterward. Chase is the most, like a chase sequence is the most natural way to do that, and you do see that in a lot of indie games. But I think there are other ways that you can do that in a creative way that I think could make it really good. Whether it's a jump scare followed by the disturbing realization that comes with that jump scare, right? Like the jump scare is tied to the narrative in such a way that it doesn't relax afterwards, but makes the narrative more concerning or frightening or scary or whatever. That's good usage, I think. These are, again, all my own very subjective thoughts, but of course subjectively I'm right. But Another thing that a lot of horror games struggle with, and I know that they do, is because game making is hard. I get it, but so many horror games are walking simulators. PT, playable trailer. It came out on the PlayStation 4. I don't remember what year that was, 2014 or something. That was the game that never got made. But the playable trailer is a walking simulator, and I sometimes. Well, I think that is a fantastic horror experience. You're looping through that hallway over and over again, and things are changing, and there's scary stuff. While it's a fantastic horror experience, I sometimes lament because I feel as though, and I could be wrong here, but I feel as though that set in motion a lot of the walking simulator horror games that came afterwards. Something that I think makes the Resident Evil games, especially Resident Evil 2, so effective as scary games is that there is a constant uneasiness because there are zombies everywhere, and you're never really safe. And the issue with walking simulators is a lot of the time, a game where you're just walking around and scary stuff is happening to you, is you don't actually feel like you have any real choice. And real choice is what makes things scary. If you feel like you're being railroaded on everything, it's not scary. What makes games so uniquely special, compared to like movies, when you're watching a movie, stuff is happening on the screen. You're not involved. You're a viewer, but you're not, and you're there and you're watching and consuming it, but that's where it ends. You have no control over what happens. But what makes games so uniquely scary And what makes horror video games so good is that you as the player have free will. And free will is a scary thing, because free will means you have the choice to do something that might scare you or not. And so an issue with a lot of walking simulators is they do not allow for the player to have any gameplay choice. And gameplay choice is what brings the best fear, because you don't want to... Sorry, the kitty's meowing. Percy, please stop meowing. Because as the player, you're scared to open the door. You're scared to pick up the flashlight and interact. And those are little things, but you can take it further. Interactiveness in horror games brings even more fear, because there's a tactileness. There's now choices. Percy, come here. Noisy kitty. Come here. So that's something that I think is a lot of horror games struggle with, is that there's nothing to do other than, press E to pick up the spooky newspaper article, or press E to move the wooden board. Oh, it's scary. Like, you gotta gameplay is important. Gameplay is underrated in horror games, strangely enough, I think, especially indie ones. And I know it's not easy, but I truly think that the more your gameplay is tied to the scariness, the better your horror game will be, and the scarier it will be. Far better than just moving around and then being able to sprint every now and again, or hide even. Hiding is good, but could be better. So that's my other thought. My next one is more of a personal nitpick. I mean, these all kind of are, but my next one in particular is I roll my eyes at this point because it's so overused. Horror experiences are hard to make because narratively people always default to the same thing. Oh, it's spooky, it's haunted. But the one that is so often is there was a tragedy. It's like, and oftentimes they'll make you they'd have that twist of like, oh, and you were the murderer all along, and it's like, wow. Sorry, I'm looking down because I'm giving Kitty some scritches right here. Could you imagine how crazy it would be if Kitty was like a person? He's a cat. He's our fat cat. He's great. His name's Percy. We're trying to make him eat less. He's annoying, yeah, but he's sweet. Anyway, I lost my train of thought with that horrible kitty joke. A unique narrative is really important. And I think that you can have a narrative that, a lot of people use, and that's fine, so long as your execution is important, and your character is important, and your gameplay is important, is good, as I should say, not important, sorry. But start with a unique idea. The idea that I had, there was a horror game that I wanted to make, and I still do it, and I'd be the first to admit this isn't like an overly unique idea, but my vision for it I thought was rather strong, at least how I thought it would look in my head, which is hard to translate into words. I'm not a very good artist, otherwise I'd be able to draw and be like, look at how cool this is, but I don't have that ability yet. But my idea was, I liked the idea of there being some sort of, I don't know, apocalyptic event, not original. But I like the idea of, whether they're zombies or spirits or ghouls or gooblers or whatever, it's your job as a, whether you're a military police guy, you have to clear an apartment and rescue 3 or 4 individuals, each floor. There's 5 floors, and you have to go through each floor and clear it. And and you have to clear it. That's the whole point, is it's important that you clear it. You can't avoid it. You have to check each and every room for survivors. But obviously, sprinkled through the survivors are the not survivors, which are spookums. And so I think that that's not an incredibly creative, original idea, but it's certainly better than, at least in my opinion, it's certainly better than, the guy murdered his daughter and his daughter's haunting him again. How many times have you seen that? How many times have you seen the guy that murdered his wife and his daughter, and then the bathtub fills with blood because that's where he murdered the daughter, and I don't know. You see these things, these tried and true, repeated methods for storytelling for horror, and it can be very trite, and it can be very draining to watch. And Kitty, come on up, come on. I don't know, it just can be kind of disappointing. There he is. So that was one of the things that I find myself just regularly frustrated by, is there's just not an original narrative. If you have a hard time writing, there are so many writers out there, and there's so many ideas out there. I would really recommend checking the idea you have with some people around you, asking if it's creative, Go on forums, meet some people. There are so many communities that are trying to make things. You can find people to work with, and especially in the indie space, there are a lot of people who are willing to do stuff for free just because they want to, because it's fun. So if you feel like writing's not your strong suit, then find someone who can write for you, and collaborate, because you can come up with some great ideas when you're working with other people. So yeah, that's one of the things that I think. Oh, sorry, an example of, I think, a really unique story. Still Wakes the Deep is a very cool horror game, and the funny thing is, it kind of is like a walking simulator. There's not like a whole lot you can do. You can run and jump, but for the most part, it's just walking around and sneaking, and you grab something, flip a switch. It's not particularly engaging gameplay wise, but narratively and setting, oh boy, great job. They do such a good job. I mean, on an oil rig where some sort of cosmic entity is broken loose and is corrupting it's straight up like The Thing. But it's incredibly unique. I don't know if it's based on anything, but as a game, it's incredibly unique. And I think that is super, 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 that's a great place to look at and be like, that's awesome. Mouthwashing I feel like that kind of is a horror game. Super unique premise as well. Find a cool premise. Find a unique thing. Find something that looks fun, that sounds fun, that feels interesting and engaging. That is 50. Ghouls and ghasts and ghosts and goblins are fun. In fact, I love ghosts. I'm a huge fan of like paranormal settings. But they are so often attached to storylines that are incredibly banal. I used the word properly this time. And that's just a bummer. It's a bummer. No, it is. I know. It's banal. That's what I said, because I said banal, and I was like, "There's no way it said banal." And then I looked it up afterwards, and it was banal. I didn't say it properly. It's banal. Banal. Anyway, hey kitty. So I don't know. It's just get a good story, get a good plot, get something that you feel like you don't see a lot of, because it will make your game stand up, and it'll make it really compelling too. This is one of my longer videos. Wow, 17 minutes. I had more to say on this than I thought. Also, I'm rambling quite a bit, but what else is new? Something else. If you're making an indie game, you don't need to have 6 endings. It's not a requirement. In fact, I would say it'd be better just to have one really good one than 6 endings that are like, it's like a trope. It's a joke in the indie horror community of like, it's like, oh, I'm the spooky investigator, and I walked into the spooky apartment, and I need to investigate the death of these 5 family members. And then, like, in the game, you can turn around and just leave, and then it's like, ending 1 of 6, the smart ending, you ran away. Like, you don't need to do that. In fact, I would personally recommend you don't, unless there is a narrative justification for there to be multiple endings. Multiple endings can be great for completionists and for if, like, the narrative is, again, served by that. But if there's no reason to do that. I think a lot of people will add it because they want to pad time. They want to give more gameplay to the game. It's like, oh, well, if you get this ending, well, if you play it again, you get this ending. There has to be some degree of, I think what makes a good story is that you commit to it. Commit to your ending. Choose an ending, commit to it. Or just have 2. Give the player one choice that they make at a pivotal moment, and that is the choice that will dictate which ending they get. But to get 8 endings or 4 even, because it's just like, oh, well, you got all the secret goat plushes, so now you can sacrifice it to the goat god, and like, I don't know. I find it to be lame. In general, I kind of have a thing against different endings and multiverses. I'm going to talk about that in another video. But different endings, they feel like they kind of can invalidate the one that you got. And what makes I think a narrative experience so good is that you're stuck with it. It's something that you got, and that's it. You eat the dish that you are served, and you enjoy it. Dang it. I think that you gotta take a stance for your narrative. So take a stance for your narrative. Pick a narrative you like and stick with it. Stick with it through the end. Don't cop out. Choose an ending or 2 that you really like and stick with it. Now, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that really comes to mind when it comes to spooky spookums. Oh, yeah. This is just, again, nitpicky, and I'm not trying to be rude to any or all people who do voice acting or do game development and are interested in voice acting or get voice actors, if you are not 1,000,000% confident in the voice actors that you get for your indie game, don't have voices. You don't need to have voices. Text is great. Bad voice acting will ruin tension like you would not believe. Bad voice acting gets rid of all of the good flavor that you've been building up in your sauté pan of horror accoutrement. If you have poor voice acting, it'll completely negate any of the tension that you've been building up with. And it can just really ruin the experience. I remember there was a couple years ago, 3 or 4, maybe it was even more than a couple years ago, there was a horror game about camera, not the Fatal Frame game, but this was more recent than that. It was like I don't know if it was an indie game, but it was, you have a camera and you're going around, you're solving these puzzles, and I don't know who made it. I really should do my research, so I get cat hair in my nose. So much to care. Okay. I don't know who made it, but I think it's like a name. It's like Emily or Sarah or something like that. It's like the name of the game. But you have a camera and you go around and you solve puzzles. And the voice acting in that game is really hard to listen to. It's rough. It is a rough listen, which is a shame because the game was actually pretty interesting. It was, not like groundbreaking or anything, but it was a solidly made horror experience that had some good puzzles. And I remember watching a lot of people play it back in the day on like stream and stuff. And I don't know, but the voice acting, man, it was not good. It wasn't awful. Like I want to make that clear. It wasn't like really bad. Like oh man, did they just pull some guy off the street? Like they clearly looked for talent, or someone in studio was like, hey, I can do it, and they're like, oh yeah, you do a good job. But when you are with that character 24/7, or I don't know, it's like a 3-hour game. It's not that long. When you're with a character for 3 hours or even 15 minutes, and they're constantly narrating what's going on, it can be rough, and it can ruin your game. So I would say, if you're doing a solo game or you're being a dev for any horror game or games in general, but we're talking about horror games right now, skip the voice acting unless you are like 1,000,000% confident that it adds to the experience, because 9 times out of 10, I don't think it does. I think that text can actually be even better. Some good text is all you need. Again, look at Mouthwashing. That game was like praised for its writing and its dialogue and its thing, and it doesn't have voice acting. There's no voice acting. It is a voice acting-less game. There's a lot of games like that. Look to those games, because there's a lot of other games that I think really struggle with it. I remember the Mortuary Assistant came out a couple years ago, and the dialogue was and the voice acting was it wasn't bad, but it was like serviceable. But there were a lot of times where it felt like the voice acting just didn't help. And if it didn't help, then it's hindering. That's how I feel, at least. And that's just me, I suppose. But or you could, I like to do voices. I'll do silly voices. So call me up. Give me a call. Drop daddy a line. Anyway, that was yep. You can't really see him. He's right out of frame. I'm trying to lift him, but he's too fat. Not really. Anyway, that's my other thought. Wow, there's so much fuzz floating around. I don't think the camera can pick it up because it's not that high quality. But anyway, horror games, I think they're so special because when they're done right, they're done extraordinarily. I played through Silent Hill 2, the remake, and I thought it was very, very, very good. Genuinely, I thought it was great. A good, solid horror semi-action puzzle game. Resident Evil 4 is like an action game. Has some spooky elements, but it's not really horror. Great game, too. I love the Resident Evil games. I'm really, really into the Resident Evil games. They're ridiculous and they're campy. Oh, one last thing. Yes, one last thing I wanted to touch on. That just reminded me. Okay, forget everything I just said. Something that makes really good horror, and I think I've talked about this in some past videos, I don't know, but just in general for like media, but good horror is not just scary. It needs to have something else to hold on to. More often than not, you see people pair horror and tragedy. Horror and sadness, those go together. It's like peas in a pod. People always do that. There's a reason why it's like, oh, the dad murdered his wife and his daughter. Oh, that's sad. And then it's scary. You don't see people like pairing like, happy, fun times with spooky scaries. That could be really good, you know. I remember seeing a game that like was mimicking Animal Crossing and it made it scary, and that was kind of fun and quirky. But I would say, you want scariness to be part of it, find another aspect, whether it's action, whether it's tragedy is used a lot, sadness is used a lot, and it can be good still, but maybe a little more creative. Silliness can be very scary. I think that there's a lot of instances in what was it that I was playing that was really scary? Maybe it was Silent Hill. No, Silent Hill's not really scary. Resident Evil 4 wasn't really scary. It's more just fun. I was playing Metroid, Super Metroid for the SNES. Great game, so good. That game seriously unnerved me, and and it's funny because it's not like a scary game, but there's a degree of the unknown that I really like, and there's a quirkiness to it. I think that quirkiness and oddness and silliness go really well with horror because they're kind of at ends, but they can work together in a way that can really disturb. It's like a reason why like clowns are scary, right? And like other things like that. It's like when you turn something funny or fun into something scary, that can be really freaky. I think that's another reason why people like the mascot horror so much. Five Nights at Freddy's, Poppy Playtime, you know them, Garden of Banban, which anyway, there's a reason why a lot of those games are so popular. It's because they blend this whimsical with the spooky, and you can, I think, change it up a bit, get more creative. Don't do mascot horror. Everyone does mascot horror. Do something cool. Do something different. But find two things. You know, if it's just scary, no one will care. You can't care about something that's just scary. You have no ties to it. So tie in something else. Tie in humor. Tie in a character you care about. Tie in a sad narrative, a happy narrative. Tie in something cool or action or angry, or find an emotion, a mystery. Maybe you're solving a mystery or something like that. But you can't just have horror by itself. I mean, maybe you can. I'm sure there's some instances where you're like, well, actually, which sure. But I would say in general, horror rarely ever exists in a vacuum. It's almost always tied to something else, which gives it weight, which is very important. So I think that's about it. I'm sure that I'll stop recording this in 30 minutes almost. I'm sure I'll stop recording this and then I'll think of something and be like, I should have said that. But that's what the comments are for. So I will leave that there. I would love to hear anyone's thoughts. If there's any like horror games that you feel like exemplify the best horror experience in all of its encompassing ways, I would love to know. Or if you disagree with everything I just said, or if you're a horror indie dev and you're like, hey, good advice, or hey, bad advice, what are you talking about? What are you saying? Then let me know, because I don't know. I do like to hear what people have to say. I find it to be very cool and compelling and a great time. So, okay, that's it. Bye.